Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, congratulations. You made it to the weekend. It is Friday, and the weekend is upon us. We got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about Joe Biden right off the bat. He did a town hall meeting with CNN last night and Anderson Cooper, and we're going to drive in. It was kind of weird. We're going to talk about that and a few things where he admitted his white privilege and that he's benefited from it, and a few other topics along that. Of course, President Trump had a tremendous rally last night at an airport. It was incredible, man. And I believe in Wisconsin. I think I'm right about that. But then we're going to talk specifically about something that President Trump spoke on yesterday, and that was returning patriotism to our schools, to actually teach American exceptionalism in our schools, and we'll elaborate on that. And if we have time, I'm going to bring a story I tried to get to yesterday. Hopefully we will. A kind of a we're not going to take it anymore mask protest or anti-mask protest that are happening around the country, and we'll talk to you a little bit about that. But before we get any deeper into the show, I want to give a special shout out and thank you to our sponsor, Big Daddy Unlimited, otherwise known as BDU. We're live from the BDU studios, and we greatly appreciate that. If you want to help out the show and help yourself at the same time, check out our sponsorship link. You can access that by wherever you're watching this video, whether it's live or on a rebroadcast from Facebook to Dish Network Channel 219 through America's Voice News. Look at the top of above the video. You will see a description of the show. You will see a link in there to Big Daddy Unlimited. It says sponsorship link. Click on that. 99-cent 1 month virtually free trial. You'll have access to factory direct pricing on all things Second Amendment, from guns and ammo to tactical gear to swag to everything in between. Over thousands of items shipped directly to you. After the first month, and you can cancel it anytime, it's $10 a month, but you'll get more savings on your first purchase than your subscription, especially if you buy guns or ammo, as I say, shipped directly to you. A portion of that money, $4 to be exact, goes to the show and helps us to grow it even further. So check it out. I really appreciate it. All right, on with the show, as they say. This is a USA Today article. Biden, I've benefited from being white, offers stark contrast to Trump on race, from USA Today. Now, what they're talking about, a contrast, they're talking about when Bob Woodward, on the tapes of the Woodward interviews with Trump that were released this past week, where Trump said that, Bob Woodward, and we're going to get specifically into it in just a moment, asked him about white privilege, and basically Trump said, man, you've been drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't have any, but we'll expand upon that. So that's the comparison contrast. Democratic nominee Joe Biden said Thursday that he has benefited from the privileges of being white, a sentiment that differs from President Trump, who is consistently, according to the article, denied the existence of systematic racism. I don't think that's entirely accurate. I think the more accurate thing is that President Trump basically said that racism, systematic racism, is over. Not that racism is over. And I'll tell you all the time, I agree with that statement. I've said it before President Trump did. Systematic racism, what I would call institutional racism, is over. Does that mean racism is over? Of course not. Racism is alive and well. There's no question about it. But you're never going to legislate what is in a person's heart. This is what the left doesn't seem to understand. You can pass all the legislation you want. You're never going to change what is in a person's heart, what's in a person's heart through legislation. Only time, only a willingness, and in many, many cases, only through the help of God's glory and God's grace, which is the best way to live, by the way, are you going to change what's in a person's heart. That's just the way I see it. But systematic racism is over. Let me give you a definition. I looked up systematic racism because words and phrases mean something. Here's the definition: systems and structures that have procedures or processes that disadvantage African Americans. Now, I'm not saying that there's not racism, but systematic racism where government has like whites only kind of thing or doesn't allow you to access certain things based on color or gives preference to people based on color. Actually, that does exist. We'll get into that in just a moment. But don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that, like, for instance, what happened to George Floyd could have certainly been racism, but it's not legal. What the police officer did in that case doesn't appear to be legal. But it doesn't stop what is in that person's heart. So you could have all the police reform you want. If you have a bad cop, you have a bad cop. And as I've said before, something my old daddy used to say, there's no evidence that there's a higher percentage of bad cops, and he would say bad politicians, than there are crooked barbers. It's just that they're in more position to do harm. You know, a crooked cop can harm you in many ways. A crooked barber might give you an illegal blow dry like they did to Nancy Pelosi, or give you a bad haircut. But there's no evidence that there's a higher percentage of them. But as far as systematic racism, let me read this definition a bit again. Systems and structures that have procedures or processes that disadvantage African Americans. So based on color of skin, it doesn't happen anymore. Now, there is systematic, if you want to call it that, racism, where there is actual government policies that benefit you according to race, like affirmative action. And I'm not even necessarily taking an opinion on that. I think that time has passed, but maybe it was necessary. But let's give a definition of affirmative action: the practice or policy of favoring individuals belonging to groups known to have been discriminated against previously. So groups of people have been discriminated against in the past. So the very affirmative action definition talks about in its essence that it's not about current systematic racism. It's about injustices in the past. It's a type of reparations, balancing the scale, that type of thing. But systematic racism is over. As I say, it doesn't mean racism is, because that's an individual choice. And only, like I say, I really believe only the grace of God can change that. But a person has to be willing to
the first in my family to go to college. Up here, my dad busted his neck. My dad came up here, worked here, lost his job like a lot of people did here. There used to be a bad joke in the 60s in Scranton. No one's in Scranton, everybody's from Scranton because so many people lost their jobs. We are as good as anybody else. And guys like Trump, who inherited everything and squandered what they inherited, are the people that I've always had a problem with, not the people who are busting their neck.
Interesting how he would use busted their neck in that. But there's so much to unpack there. We're only going to touch on a little bit about it. But first of all, what did any of what he just said, other than maybe having to have that talk, as he's talking about, with a black child, especially a black male child, I mean, what does any of that have to do with white privilege or the lack thereof? Or I don't get it. I mean, he's talking, and everything he's saying in individualists, if you take it, is coherent. Just individually is coherent. His overall answer to that question is completely incoherent. It didn't have anything to do with it. But a couple of things I want to point out to you. He talks about how, Scranton was back then the victim of losing jobs, kind of like NAFTA, sir, that you championed, and now have come to say that Donald Trump's plan is actually better than what your plan was, and jobs lost all over the country. The America literally hollowed out by Democrats for the most part, with complicity, bipartisanship, as they say. Republicans caved. That's what that means. By Republicans gave us NAFTA and other agreements like that essentially hollowed out America. So thank you very much, Mr. Biden. In another question, I got to throw this out while a guy asked him a question and was talking about how he was struggling to make it. And the gentleman mentioned, and I had to take out a loan through my credit card at 25%. Well, Anderson Cooper, if he was worth his salt, should have said, well, you can thank Joe Biden for that, or at least ask him a question. Because Joe Biden, if you don't like anything you don't like about credit cards and the rules and regulations behind them, you have one person mainly to thank, and that is Joe Biden. He was the champion of the credit card companies when he was in the Senate. You don't have to take my word for it. You could, but you just look it up. You could Google it, but Google is of the devil. I'm just saying. But the part where it really got me, and you hear this kind of whispered about Trump, that he squandered, some kind of money, that somehow it was given to him. Now, did Trump have an advantage over the average Joe out there? No question about it. But the reality is that he was given roughly, and there's some discrepancy about it, but anywhere from $10 to $100 million in a gift or a loan from his father to start his business. And his father warned him, don't go to New York City and do it, because they were over in like Queens, I do believe. Don't go to Manhattan. But Trump promptly went to Manhattan, the toughest, by the way, real estate place in the world, on the planet, and thrived there. But let me just say, because you might say, okay, well, $100 million. Wow. Yeah, Trump turned that into up to $10 billion, anywhere from 4 to 10 billion, depending on, and let me tell you, when you cross that B mark, the billion mark, it doesn't really matter if you have 4 or 10 billion. A billion is a pretty good pile of money, don't you think? Billy Bob says, yeah, if you hadn't met my psychic sidekick, he's Billy Bob Bass. He's got a Twitter handle. It's at Billy Bob Bass 1, and mine is at John Martin Talks. But yes, Donald Trump was given, let's just use the high figure, $100 million from his father. And he turned it into, let's say, the lowest figure out there, which no one really disputes, $4 billion. If we just use the highest on the one and the lowest on the other. Let me tell you, to take $100 million and turn it into $4 billion, let alone $10 billion, is not squandering at all. It's just the opposite. It is remarkable. It would be like saying your father gave you $10,000 and you turned it into $1 million. Now, who would deserve credit for that? Pretty much you, right? So Donald Trump, yeah, he was given a helping hand. Like, that's part of the American dream, is it not? That's part of the American dream that is falling apart by the Democrats, is that each generation should be better than the next. Obama literally told us that those days were behind us. Remember that? that we're leading from behind, that we're, instead of commander in chief, he was a voice in a chorus. All that has changed back to Trump, but it just upsets me when I hear that. Anyway, let's go on. Back to the article. The contrasting comments between the two candidates, talking about Donald Trump on ABC, his town hall meeting with George Stephanopoulos, and comparing and contrasting that with Joe Biden on CNN Anderson Cooper last night. That's what the contrast. The contrasting comments between the two candidates comes as the country has been facing a reckoning, interesting choice of words, a reckoning this summer over racial injustice in policing, resulting in protest and calls for reform. So I thought I'd look up the word reckoning, because basically that's kind of used in the South. And I got some trolls out there, by the way, and this one keeps trolling me and calls me a dumb hillbilly. And I keep telling him there ain't no hills where I live, but hey, people support me against these trolls, and I appreciate it very much on Facebook, but I actually take it as a badge of honor. I must be doing something right if I'm being trolled as much as I am on Facebook. So keep up the good work, people. I appreciate it. But reckoning, the avenging or punishing of past mistakes or misdeeds. So if what we're seeing in the cities of America right now, the murder rate going through the roof, people burning, pillaging, everything else, if that is a reckoning and it's for past misdeeds, where does this end? Where does it begin? Where does it end? And who deserves a reckoning? So if you burn down my business, do I deserve to take you out? Do I deserve to shoot a looter? I mean, because isn't that a reckoning for misdeeds done in the past? If I find that you actually went into my business, which is the American dream to have your own business, and burned it to the ground, do then I have a right to turn around due to this term reckoning and burn your house down? I mean, according to this logic, you can make sense of it. But there will be a reckoning. I do believe a reckoning is coming. And it needs to culminate on November 3rd. By the way, and I was going to cover it, but it's kind of a late breaking story, and we might talk about it. I might talk about it some over the weekend or maybe Monday. And this is something we really need to pay close attention to. Talk about a reckoning on November 3rd. Did you see what happened in Pennsylvania yesterday? The Supreme Court in Pennsylvania basically stole the election in a way, at least in Pennsylvania, from Donald Trump. Because what they did, and I'm not going to get too deep into it, but what they did was they ruled that absentee ballots, mail-in ballots, could be counted 3 days, could be literally turned in 3 days after the election, and they don't even have to be postmarked. Don't have to be postmarked. This was done by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which is different than like here in Florida, because in Pennsylvania, you're elected to the court as opposed to appointed. And the 5 of the 7 judges are Democrats, and they basically are trying to give the election to Joe Biden, it sounds to me like. So we better stay on top of that. They're going to do it by hook and crook no matter what. But back to this. So the reckoning needs to come November 3rd. But you want to look at the difference. If you have time and you're bored, I suppose, over the weekend, and you want to see the difference between how Donald Trump is treated versus Joe Biden in these two town halls, one on ABC with Trump and the other on CNN with Biden last night, you'll see a lot. Biden's, man, it looked totally scripted. I guarantee you Donald Trump had no idea what question specifically was going to be asked. Now, I'm sure he had a general idea of the topics and those kind of things, because who wouldn't? But Biden's, man, was so scripted, it's unbelievable. And he was given softball question after softball question last night in the thing. I mean, he wasn't asked one tough question, wasn't asked really a tough question, and hardly even any follow-up by Anderson Cooper. Go back and look at Trump's deal, and Stephanopoulos was on the attack, which I fully expected. There's no surprise there, but he was attacking President Trump at every single opportunity, during the town hall that President Trump was, and Biden was basically given a pass. The bottom line on these debates coming up, hopefully we're going to have them, and I've been saying this, but if I say it, it bears repeating. Donald Trump is going to have to take responsibility for taking the fight and basically shaking up Joe Biden. and exposing him for the fraud that he is, and unfortunately for the mental health issues he is suffering from. You cannot expect the moderators to do that. You could expect it, but it ain't going to happen. They're not going to do it. Even Chris Wallace, as I said yesterday, there is no way that he's actually going to be a friend to Donald Trump. If anything, he'll be a friend to Biden. I talked about it yesterday, and one of the people on one of my fans on Facebook, and I appreciate it very much, said, yeah, it looks like every time Chris Wallace is interviewing a conservative, let alone the president, that he's interviewing for a job at CNN. Spot on, sir. Or I don't remember if it's male or female, but spot on. I could not have said it any better. By the way, if you want to check out a podcast of our show anytime, there's several ways to do it. One, you could go directly to John Martin Facebook page, like it, share it with others. I appreciate that very much. Our YouTube channel is getting better by the day, thanks to our technicians here in the back, Billy Bob and friends in the back, but also because of you subscribing and viewing it more. We need to bump up our subscriptions there. We need to get more views on YouTube. Spell it out, John Martin Talks. I'd greatly appreciate it. You can check us rebroadcast on the streaming service of America's Voice News, which, by the way, is a great place to catch not only great programming like ours, but anything Donald Trump, like the rally last night he had, is broadcast live across America's Voice News. We broadcast on our Facebook page as well. Check them out. They're on Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV. You can download a free app on Android or iPhone. Channel 219 Dish Network and the Pluto Network. You can see our show, and it's archived on there as well. Check it out. But make no mistake, Trump is going to have to take it to Biden in these upcoming debates. With the first one is the 29th of this month, I believe. I want to play a clip from last night, because this clip, I got to set it up. This is a clip when they were going to commercial break, and Biden came on with his mask. They talked about social distancing and testing, and they maintained their social distance. But when Biden and Anderson Cooper thought the camera had panned away from them, they not only violated the social distance, but Biden was literally whispering in Anderson Cooper's ear. I don't know if he's smelling his hair. He don't have that much. But check this out. Talk about hypocrisy of the left. They want you to social distance, wear a mask, and stay apart from your loved ones, but not so much if you actually are a Democrat like Pelosi and the beauty parlor. Now we got Biden and Anderson Cooper. Check it out.
When we come back, we'll have more questions from our audience for former Vice President Joe Biden. Thanks.
The Blockbuster.
Check it out right there. Watch it. There you go, to lean in. Look at that right there, man. I mean, unbelievable, right? I mean, he's literally whispering into his ear there. So you don't think there is a bias there, man? Give me a break. If Donald Trump did that, if that actually happened, they would be wanting to impeach 45 for that. But you'll get hardly a peep about that on anything other than, I guess, what you want to call alternative media here at John Martin Talks. That's why you got to watch shows like JMT. That's why we got to have you support us. As I keep telling you, not everybody can be a fighter, but everybody can support those of us in the fight like me and Billy Bob. And the best way to do that, beyond sharing our programming, and believe me, I extremely appreciate that, is to go to our sponsorship link. Look at the show description above the video. No matter where you're watching it, you will see a description of our show, sponsorship link, Big Daddy Unlimited. I talked in depth about it at the beginning of the show. Click on that. If you have any interest in anything Second Amendment, from guns, ammo, to tactical gear and everything in between, thousands of items shipped directly to your door at factory direct pricing, and it would help us as well. Check it out. All right, we're going to move along to a Politico story, and this is Donald Trump, man. I mean, Donald Trump, he realizes what is facing us, and one of the most critical things facing our country right now is the indoctrination by the hardcore leftists that have taken over our school system. And we, the American people, have allowed that to happen, and it is our fault, and we can remedy it, and Donald Trump has a plan. Politico article. Trump goes after Black Lives Matter toxic propaganda. President Donald Trump leaned into the culture wars on Thursday. And believe me, we are in a civil war for the soul of this nation, cultural war. It could become a shooting war. I hope it does not. That's why I keep telling you, ladies and gentlemen, we got to man the political ramparts. At least we have to man the real ones again, which would be a dadgum shame because that price has been paid and we shouldn't have to pay it again, but we might. There's no guarantee. As Ronald Reagan said, freedom is not passed on through the bloodstream. We got to do it to each generation, and that is what Donald Trump is attempting to do right here. President Donald Trump leaned into culture wars on Thursday, railing against the Black Lives Matter, which is a communist Marxist organization. Not everybody involved are wearing a T-shirt, but the leaders clearly are. Look at don't take my word for it. You could, but look at their website. They tell you that. Black Lives Matter movement, the 1619 Project, and what he called toxic propaganda in school curriculum. Trust me on this. It is a major problem what is happening in our school system. People always ask me about running for office, and I applaud anyone willing to put their name on the dotted line from president down to dog catcher. It takes a lot to run for public office. But a lot of people want to start with like the state legislature, and I'm not knocking that. But what we really need is people to run for school boards across the country. We need to take our schools back one school board at a time, and also what Donald Trump is doing on the national level. Obviously, we need to reelect him. But President Trump said, "We are here today to declare that we will never submit to tyranny." Amen. Never submit. Doesn't mean it ain't going to happen, but we're not going to submit to it. We're not going to go without a fight. We will reclaim our history, our country for citizens of every race, color, religion, and creed. Basically, what Donald Trump is saying is what I've been saying all along. We need to teach our history, the true history of America. I'm 100% in favor of that. I sum it up this way. We need to teach the good, the bad, and the ugly of our history, period. No sugarcoating, teach it all. I'll put our glorious history up, even with the warts and everything else, against anything ever before, currently or in the past, period. Trump unleashed a cascade of grievances from the National Archives Museum, where he gave his speech, at an event timed to coincide with the anniversary of the signing of the Constitution, which yesterday was Constitution Day. It's Constitution Day, and I forgot to mention it because one of the reasons is it's Constitution Day if you watch our show in the next time every day at John Martin Talk, because it is this center, and it is what is being threatened by this progresso world that is upon us. This thing, the election, November 3rd election, is bigger than Donald Trump. Yes, Donald Trump is the key figure in it, no question about it, but even he'll tell you it's the biggest election, and he's been criticized of this, in the history potentially of our country. There's no question about that. It is definitely up there in the top one or two, if not the top. And it's not really about Donald Trump, although obviously he is the choice we need to make. It is about whether we're going to do, as Benjamin Franklin said, we're going to be able to keep this republic that they gave us, that people have fought and died for. That and the Constitution, that is really what this election is all about, because I don't want to over dramatize. I don't think it's possible. But if Biden and Kamala Harris and the Trojan horse, which is Joe Biden, gets in the White House, it could be over. I mean, there's really hardly any doubt about that. But it says, but he talks about this, the signing of the U.S. Constitution. Listen to this. This is the news article. It says, unlike his often, talking about the president's speech, freewheeling rhetoric, Trump hewed closely to his prepared remarks during the speech. Now, why did they put that tagline on there? Couldn't they just have reported up to the point of what he talked about? No, they had to make an opinion inside this news article, which is subtle, but it's always an attack on Donald Trump. There's no bias here, right? Think about this, ladies and gentlemen. Donald Trump is being criticized for sticking to basically prepared remarks. I'm not sure. He probably had a teleprompter there, but Biden actually has teleprompters when he's answering questions from voters. Trump never has that. Trump doesn't have a teleprompter at his press conferences. When he's giving a speech, maybe he does, but when he's actually answering questions, he doesn't have a microphone or a headphone in his ear, microphoned up so that he can hear the answer to it. If anything, he asks Kayleigh McEnany, hey, can you bring that paper you told me about over here? I mean, he doesn't mind showing that he might not know exactly what's happening, but he'll get the information to you. To me, that's leadership. But Biden is clearly using a teleprompter, and we played a video the other day where Brett Baer asked one of Biden's top people if Biden was using a teleprompter to answer questions from reporters and voters, and the guy would not answer it. We have video proof right now. This happened just a few days ago. Joe Biden was doing a internet event, a event with the UAW and other unions, and he's being asked Zoom questions over the internet from voters, and you can clearly see that you can't see the teleprompters, they're off camera, but he's asking them to pick it up so he can answer her question. Check it out.
My name is Rebecca Vadrine, and this is my question. As a Black woman in America who's worked with union jobs and non-union jobs, I know that there's 60 million Americans saying that they would vote for a union today. And I would like to know, what will your administration do to help them give them that chance? Thank you.
Let's move it up here. You know, there used to be a basic bargain in this
That's
country.
good enough. Let me ask you, even if you hate Donald Trump, that guy right there that is like, I mean, do you really believe he's prepared to take on Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping or whatever his name is in China, or the latest Kim in Korea? Do you really believe he's up to taking on the Ayatollahs of Iran? Really? Do you really think that? I mean, last night in the town hall event, Biden was asked about Russia and China from Anderson Cooper, and I should have played the tape, but I'll just tell you what he said. He said that Russia, he was asked if China and Russia were enemies of the United States. Biden said that Russia was an opponent. Now, this is the guy that supposedly Putin put Donald Trump in the White House, right? Supposedly is just controls our election system and everything else. But Putin is an opponent, just an opponent is all. You know, everything's supposed to be Russia, but he's only an opponent. And with China, he said China is a competitor. He didn't even label them an opponent, a competitor, like they're no different than, say, France or England or Germany. They're competitors, or Canada. They're competitors. For God's sakes, China is the enemy of the free world. My God, man. I mean, they are the most oppressive force on the planet right now. And Joe Biden can simply call them a competitor. Are you really prepared to trust? Forget how much you hate Donald Trump. I would ask you, are you prepared to turn over our great country to that dude? Really? I mean, if it's true, man, how scary is that we've become that way? But President, back to this idea of taking back our schools and teaching American exceptionalism. Listen to what the president said. Left-wing mobs have torn down statues of our founders, no doubt, desecrated our memorials, and carried out a campaign of violence and anarchy. Absolute truth. He says, whether it's the mob on the street or the cancel culture in the boardroom, the goal is the same: to silence dissent, to scare you out of speaking the truth, and to bully Americans into abandoning their values. Ladies and gentlemen, our entire way of life is under direct threat, and because of our school systems, a lot of our young citizens don't even know it's happening. They don't. What scares me the most, and I'm not even talking about the kids in school right now, they're obviously, but kids that are already out of school. I've seen this so they don't even know what we've lost, let alone what we have yet to lose. They don't. They don't realize how much we've already lost, man. That's one of the reasons why I'm battling ignorance and apathy. I see myself as kind of a bridge, if you will, and think about a bridge. It goes both ways between the giants that I'm standing on that founded this nation all the way up to now, and those kids that are basically glued to their cell phones like this, that they can't look at anything. I'm trying to pass that, because when my generation is gone, and I'm not saying we're all out in a bag of chips, but we're losing the greatest generation, right? My parents, they're gone and dying in droves every day. But when you lose that connection, it's gone forever. So I feel a special duty to have this show on every day. I struggle through all kind of things. For instance, we had some internet problems this week. I know some people have wondered what was happening with our show. We've had voice issue. Were all basically internet problems that hopefully now have been resolved. They weren't on our end. They were on the provider's end, but hopefully it's been resolved. Hopefully you're hearing it clear. But what the president is talking about is spot on. And when he talks about the boardroom, it's not just that the boardroom is supporting these communist groups like Black Lives Matter and Antifa. They're actually funding them. That's what really burns me about the NFL and all that. They're giving money to the very organizations that are trying to overthrow our way of life, man. And if you want to see just how sinister this is, I want to show you a tweet when it comes up. This is from Kamala Harris. Check it out. That right there shows that Kamala, you think that's a campaign piece. It's actually not. Look at the name of that group up there. That is the group that is bailing out the people that burned down riots and all in Minneapolis and Wisconsin. Kamala Harris is advocating that you give money to the organization that is bailing out the people that burned the city down. And there's a breaking story that's just coming over the airwaves literally this morning that Kamala Harris and that organization bailed out someone who actually attempted murder on a police officer and was charged with sexual assault of an 8-year-old child. Yeah, those are the people that Kamala Harris is bailing out. Don't take my word for it. Look at her. It's on her Twitter feed, for God's sakes, man. But Twitter's not, putting a curtain over that like Facebook does or banning that. Think about that. Intentionally asking people for money to bail out criminals that assault police officers. It's unbelievable. But Trump is back to this article. Trump positioned himself as a defender of American exceptionalism against activists trying to destroy the country's sense of self. They absolutely are. They're trying, and when it comes to African Americans, the left is trying to make it where no African American has any reason to have any pride in this nation whatsoever. That is why they are tearing down even statues and things of people that absolutely are African Americans and were against slavery and everything else. They literally tearing them up. I'm surprised they haven't defaced the Martin Luther King Memorial in Washington, D.C. I guess they just can't afraid to go that far because they absolutely destroying his legacy. Because, I think Martin Luther King would be ashamed of what's happening in the country right now. And I'm talking about Black Lives Matter. Trying to destroy the country's sense of self as he continues to search for a message, talking about the president, for a message that resonates with voters as they continue to be battered by the coronavirus pandemic and its resulting economic devastation. The economic devastation is because they shut us down and won't reopen us. That's the economic devastation. It's not the coronavirus. It's these little Napoleon governors and mayors everywhere, mostly in blue states, that won't open us back up. But I like how they say that he, the president, continues to search for a message that resonates with voters. So the idea of patriotism and love of country is now a controversial and doesn't resonate with voters. My God, if that's true, man, it may already be over. Think about that for a minute. They're telling you that the message of patriotism, of love for this country, American exceptionalism, is not a resonating message with the voters of the United States of America. If true, as the Democrats said, we through. I hate to rhyme that, but if true, we through, man. To grow up, this is what the president went on to say, and man, this is powerful stuff. To grow up in America is to live in a land where everything is possible. You could become president of the United States. Barack Obama did. If we're so prejudiced, how did he get there? How he got there? Yeah, he had a broad coalition, but if the majority of white Americans didn't vote for him, he wouldn't have been there. But it's possible where anyone can rise and where any dream can come true, LeBron James. All because of the immortal principles our nation's founders described nearly 2.5 centuries ago. He's talking about the U.S. Constitution. How does it start? In order to form a more perfect union. What they're admitting, the founding fathers are admitting in the faults of man. There's a book out there somewhere that talks about all of us falling short of the glory. Maybe we ought to read it, rediscover that as well. But the founding fathers knew that human beings were flawed. They knew they were doing the best they could under the circumstances. Maybe not the best they should, but the best they could. But in order to form a more perfect union, that's what this is about. We are still a work in progress. That's why I call this why I say I'm battling ignorance and apathy daily. The ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America. It is special. There's never been anything like it. I'm not saying it's perfect. We're trying to form a more perfect union. And we're continuously trying to do that. But to totally discredit, this is one thing about what the left, this 1619 project and all that kind of stuff. I don't have enough time to get into it too deep, but they're trying to make it sound like that they've taken our history out of context. Yes, our country was founded with slave labor. There's no question about that. From literally African-American true slaves to essentially Irish conscripts to basically indentured servants of Irish people to Chinese people on the West Coast. Yes, absolutely it was. There's no doubt about that. But if you put it in context, our slavery has been with us in some form or fashion since the beginning of time. There's not a race on the planet that hasn't been enslaved by another race. I'm not trying to make one worse than the other. And right now, this competitor that Biden talks about in China is literally enslaving people to build your dadgum iPhone. And you don't seem to have a problem with that. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But the office, here's some of the steps. Let me check my time. Doing okay. Here's the Office of Management and Budget. This is some of the steps that President Trump is trying to take here. Recently disseminated the directive into the federal agencies to stop the use of critical race theory. You really need to get abreast of that. And divisive un-American propaganda sessions. Critical race theory is basically this. And I've been saying this is the new mantra of the Democratic Party. Let me calm down because this kind of pisses me off. Critical race theory essentially tells us what I say is the new Democratic mantra. America sucks. It's always sucked. It sucks for some more than others. But if you elect Joe Biden, it's going to suck for everybody equally. That basically is what they're about. The president on Thursday sought to tie turmoil over recent months to the broader effort to combat racial inequality and grapple with racism's prevalence throughout the American story or American history. The president said the left-wing rioting and mayhem are the direct result of decades of left-wing indoctrination in our school. He's right. They're basically teaching you in school that America sucks, period. But Trump went on to say, and this deserves an amen and a John Martin talks spot on right here. American parents are not going, this is what the president said, American parents are not going to accept indoctrination in our schools, cancel culture at work, or the repression of traditional faith, culture, and values in the public square. Not anymore. That's what the president said. If that matters to you, let me read this one part again. If it matters to you that we have a representation of traditional faith, if faith matters to you, if your culture matters to you, and values of the American values, our founding principles, matter to you, then you need to vote for Donald Trump on November 3rd. You don't really have a choice, ladies and gentlemen. All right, we're about out of time. I got just enough time to bring you this story that we talked about we introduced yesterday. And that is there's some protests going on. This is from a Mediaite article. It's a long headline. Let me read it really quickly. MAGA-clad anti-maskers parade through Target, a Target store, demanding take off your mask and shouting, "We're not going to take it." So I want to play this video of these people. It's not a huge group of people, but they're interesting, and they're in a Target basically with no mask and challenging other people to take their mask off. Check it out.
Take off your mask! Take it off! Take it off!
Hey, that's good enough. So here's what really gets me, and you can be for or against those people all you want, but did you hear? You barely caught it at the beginning, where the person filming it calls them an idiot, calls them a nasty name, something idiot. Even Dee Snider, who is with, I think it's the group Poison, I want to say, that Twisted Sister. I'm sorry, excuse me, Poison. Twisted Sister that has that song. We're not going to take it. He calls them, idiots and morons and stuff like that, and doesn't want them using their song, that kind of thing. So these people, agree with them or not, are basically being called, they're either hailed as heroes by people like me or called everything but a child of God. But I want to play you this video. We played it the other day. This happened recently in Rochester, I believe, New York, when people were enjoying a meal outside due to coronavirus restrictions. And this happened. We're going to play a portion of it. Let's play a couple minutes.
We're shutting the party down. Nobody's gonna touch you. We're shutting your party down.
That's good enough.
Calm down.
That's good enough. So there's that video is a bit longer. You can see it. Maybe I'll post it up over the weekend on Facebook and compare the two. But so the people, kind of peaceful, not really hurting anyone in that Target store, are called by the left everything but a child of God. But the people bum rushing a restaurant, going up, overturning people's tables, telling them they're going to shut their party down, literally taking food in one other part of the video from an elderly couple, biting a steak, drinking the woman's tea, all that without mask, all that kind of stuff. That's okay. Those people are exercising their constitutional rights and are played up by Kamala Harris. If they get arrested, they get bailed out by her as heroes. Mostly peaceful protests. I mean, it is bizarro world, ladies and gentlemen. Progresso world is upon us if we don't do something on November 3rd to make America great again. It's up to you. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it, share it with others. Check out our sponsor, Big Daddy Unlimited, at the description, as I told you, above the video, no matter where you're watching. Have yourself a glorious, great weekend. Lord willing, we'll be back here Monday morning. I'll pray for your family. You pray for mine. Let's all pray for this nation. She certainly deserves it. But as I say each and every day, from my heart, from my family to yours, have a blessed day.